Welcome to King's Peak Creative Writing, and this is Mr. Varn. The following is a crash course in poetry and form. It's intended to give you an introduction to the subject. Form in poetry. The poet Donald Hall said that poems have the effect they do on us because they give certain qualities of language. He gave these qualities some funny names. Goatfoot, milk tongue, twin bird. These are kind of hard to say. Goatfoot. Bonk baby bonk bonk, rhythm. Milk tongue. The sound and oral satisfaction, yum. Twin bird. The satisfying click at the end when opposites are resolved. Full form. Children love goat food and milk tongue. They haven't learned to like or dislike or become indifferent to language. In fact, they utterly dig language. You're probably not a child, so you're beginning to develop a distrust of language, and maybe that's healthy. But it's not going to help you with poetry. Note, too, that all these qualities are physical. They're about the way that things feel in your mouth, the way they come out, the way they make you dance. All right? They're not about just things on a page. What makes poetry different from prose in the most rudimentary sense? It's in lines, not paragraphs. Well, usually. Okay, so how do you know where to break those lines? What principles govern line length? Well, it depends on the kind of verse you're doing. An accental verse. In a summer season, when soft was the sun, I shaped me in shrouds, as a shepherd I wore, and habit as a hermit unholy of works. I went wide in this world, wonders to hear. Line lengths are determined by a consistent number of beats per line, and a beat is 2 syllables, sometimes 3 syllables, but it's bum bum or bum bum. So, bum bum, ba bum, da da da, da 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 da. Those are beats, all right? You count them in poetry just like you count them in drums and when you're dancing. In summer, so usually a beat is 2 syllables. Sometimes it can be 3. All right. Sometimes you'll have also what's called a caesura or pause in the middle of a line. This is for rhythm's sake, and it goes back in English all the way to Old English or the Anglo-Saxons in England. Bonk bonk pause, bonk bonk pause. All right, so da 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 da, just like you're dancing. Think about it. Bum ba boom, bum ba boom. But simplicity and even coarseness has its own beauty. So line lengths in poetry can be determined by a number of beats or stresses. When you follow this principle, you're writing accental verse. Line lengths, though, can also be determined by other principles, such as a set of number of syllables. When you're doing this, you're writing syllabic verse. The famous Asian syllabic verse form, of course, is the survey says haiku. We'll also talk about the senryu, senryu, which is the kind of haiku that isn't about nature. Distant siren scream, Dumba burns and playing with gasoline again. That's a haiku, or it's specifically a senryu. 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. It's syllabic verse. Tanka is a Japanese poem form with 5 unread lines, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7. 5, 7, 5, 7, 7 syllables, and it's usually about death, while haiku is usually about nature, and senryu is usually a parody. Lokra senryu, remorse. A painful sadness can't fit. Deprived, in Walmart toy aisle, wailing boy wants Barbie doll. Mama whips his butt. Syllabics aren't really native to English, however, English is a Germanic language and heavily stressed. Syllable count in and of itself isn't important to meaning. Stresses, on the other hand, can be felt and are integral to meaning. Look at the White House. Look at the White House. Yet another way of determining line length is both stresses and syllables. This is called accental syllabic verse. And this is actually the most common kind of form of poetry. A unit is comprised of a stressed syllable and its accompanying unstressed syllable. It's called a foot. It's a kind of beat. So you have I am, unstressed, stressed, trochee, stressed, unstressed, anapest, unstressed, unstressed, stressed, dactyl, stressed, unstressed, unstressed. And you also have measurements of line length. So a line with 5 feet is called pentameter, and iambic pentameter is the most common meter in all of English poetry, but it's uncommon in other languages. A line with 3 feet is trimeter. This is the most common meter of song. So the reason why pentameter is the most common is because da-da-da-da-da doesn't sound like a song, whereas trimeter, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, it sounds like you can dance to it. 6 feet is called hexameter, and so on. So on a line with 5 iambic feet is iambic pentameter. 3 dactylic feet is trimeter. 4 trochaic feet is trochaic tetrameter, and so on. Why do you suppose the iamb is so important foot in English poetry? It's because it's the sound of a heartbeat. Dare da, dare da. And it's like a drum. The drum is your own body, the way the words feel in your mouth. Da da, da da, da da. Think about your heart. Bum bum, bum bum, bum bum. And that's goat foot. That's the rhythm. That's the pattern. That's the thrumming. That's the throbbing. That's your own pulse and words. Traditional or fixed form is a type in which has one or more prescribed formal characteristics, a set rhythm, a set rhyme scheme, a set stanza length, and some famous examples of the form include the sonnet, the sestina, the villanelle, and blank verse, and you're going to get a chance to work on a few of these. Now this is an example of a villanelle. I guess maybe you can guess what formal characteristics it might have. The art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost that their loss is no disaster. Lose something every day, except the fluster of lost keys, the hour badly spent. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Then practice losing further, losing faster, places and names and where you meant to travel. None of them will bring disaster. I lost my mother's watch, and look, my last, or next to last, of 3 loved ones' houses went. The art of losing isn't hard to master. I lost 2 cities, lovely ones, and vaster. Some realms I own, 2 rivers, a continent. I missed them, but it wasn't a disaster. Even you, losing you, the joking voice, a gesture I love. I shan't have lied. 'Tis evident the art of losing's not hard to master, though it may look like, write it, like disaster. The More You Have to Lose by David Lehman. Time flies, and one can go by in a day. Look at your watch. Do your eyes say 2:45 or 9:15? The more you have, the more you give away. You know the feeling, having no money, having to stay with relatives when you travel, unable to say what you mean. Time lies, and a year can go by in a day. When my father turned into my son as in a play, all the fun took place off stage. What about the missing queen? The more you have, the more you give away. The less you believe, the more you wish you could pray. Like clocks without hands, the truth of a face remains unseen. Time lies, and a year goes by in a day. With an elbow on the counter and no passions left to sway, all night waitresses smoke butt after butt, coughing in between. The more you have, the more you can throw away. Ocean, what is the other side of all that blue and gray? What does the grass know of yesterday's varnished green? Time lies, and a year can go by in a day. The more you have, the more you give away. And one more villanelle here. So you'll notice it has repetitions of lines, repetitions of rhyme. It has a kind of meter. Now, you're going to get in an example later how to do this, but these are what villanelles sound like. Then comes the sestina. The sestina is a fun one. The sestina is a poem written iambic pentameter with 39 lines, divided into 6 stanzas of 6 lines each, plus a terminal envoy of 3 lines. The same 6 words conclude the lines of each stanza, but an order is varied in each stanza according to a strict pattern. The final envoy uses 6 words, but 3 appear at the end of the lines and 3 appear in the middle of the lines, and in the graph, each number represents a specific word. So here you go. Stanza 1, angel sandwich, hope, below, crave, time. Stanza 2, angel, crave, sandwich, time, below, hope. Stanza 3, hope, time, below, angel, sandwich, crave. Stanza 5, hope, crave, hope, and so on. You see how this goes. The envoy is the last that combines these words in one line, so begins with 2, ends with 5, begins with 4, ends with 3, begins with 6, ends with 1. So you end where you begin. This is a very hard form. I'm giving it as an option because maybe some of you want to try something ambitious. By the way, most people don't write sestinas and pentameter anymore because it's already hard enough, but traditionally it's written in iambic pentameter. Generally, by the way, with these poems, I'm not going to get mad if you drop the accental syllabic verse patterns. If you can just get the rhyme right, I'll be happy. And then there's a form called pantoums. Pantoums are also a kick. Lines are grouped into quatrains. Quatrains are 4-line stanzas. The final half of a pantoum must be the same as the first line. A pantoum has any number of quatrains, could be infinite almost. Lines may be of any length. Pantoums have a rhyme scheme of A, B, A, B in each quatrain, thus the lines rhyme alternately. And the pantoum must say everything twice. For all quatrains except the first line of the current stanza repeats the quatrain of the second line of the preceding quatrain, and the third line of the quatrain repeats the fourth line of the preceding quatrain. In addition, in the final quatrain, its second line repeats so far unrepeated third line in the first quatrain, and its last line repeats the so far repeated first line of the first quatrain. And thus the pattern of line repetition is as follows, where the lines of the first quatrain are represented by the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, lines in the first quatrain. 2, lines in the second quatrain. 3, lines in the third quatrain. 4, lines in the fourth quatrain, and 5 lines in the fifth and final quatrain. And there's your number pattern there. Now, this is going to seem like math until you see one. This is the pantoum for the Great Depression by Donald Justice. Our lives avoided tragedy simply by going on, without end and without apparent meaning. Oh, there's storms of small catastrophe. Simply by going on, we managed, no need for the heroic. Oh, there were storms and small catastrophes. I don't remember all the particulars. We managed, no need for the heroic. There were usual celebrations and usual sorrows. I don't need all the particulars. Across the finch, the neighbors were our chorus. There were usual celebrations, the usual sorrows. Thank God no one saw anything in verse. The neighbors were our only chorus, and if we suffered, we kept quiet about it. And at no time did anyone say anything in verse. It was an ordinary pities and fears consumed us, and if we suffered, we kept quiet about it. No audience would know our story. It was the ordinary feels and pities that consumed us. We gathered on our porches, the moon rose, we were poor. What audience would ever know our story? Beyond our windows shone the actual world. We gathered on our porches, the moon rose, we were poor. And by the time we went, drawn slowly by slow horse, somewhere our windows shone the actual world. The Great Depression had entered our souls like fog. And time went by, drawn by slow horse, and we did not ourselves know what the end was. The Great Depression had entered our souls like fog, and we had our flaws, perhaps a few private virtues. But we did not know ourselves what the end was. People like us simply go on. We had our flaws, perhaps a few private virtues, but it was by blind chance that we escaped tragedy, and there is no plot in that. It is devoid of poetry. And then you have blank verse. Now, I'm not going to have you do blank verse, because blank verse is accented but no rhyme scheme, and this is really hard to do. But the most famous form, and one of my favorite poems, is actually Robert Frost's Birches. When I see birches bend to the left and right across the lines of greater darker tree, I like to think some boy is swinging them, and by swinging doesn't bend them so low to stay as ice storms do. Often you must have seen them loaded with ice a sunny winter morning after a rain. They click upon themselves as the breeze rises and turn many-colored as the stir cracks and crays their enamel. Soon the sun's warmth makes them shed crystal shells, shattering and avalanching upon the snow crust. Such heaps of broken glass to sweep away. You think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. And there's no rhyme, but if you really pay attention, it is iambic pentameter. When I see birches bent to left and right. That's 10 syllables, that's 5 feet, that's unaccented, accented, ba-bum, ba-bum, bum, heartbeat. That's blank verse. Shakespearean plays are usually written in blank verse. Shakespearean poetry is usually written in rhymed iambic pentameter. So unrhymed iambic pentameter with no set number of lines that can go on infinitely. So let's analyze some things across the board. Does form affect content? Yes. Do sonnets or sestinas or villanelles lead to certain patterns of thinking? Kind of. Also, listen, not just for beats or metrics, but for sounds. Central sounds and textures, that's milk tongue, baby. And along with the rhythm, they make up the central body of a poem. Let's look at Frost's passage again. Loaded with ice, a sunny winter morning after rain. The clouds click upon themselves as breezes rise and turn many-colored. As the stir cracks and crazes their enamel, soon the sun's warmth makes them shed crystal shells, shadowing and avalanching across the snow crust. Look at that alliteration, all those S sounds like a snake. And then the N sound, the N, wonderful. Click colored, which is alliteration again. Click, clack, almost like onomatopoeia, right? Breeze rises, praises, zoos like petals. Stir cracks quest, riotous. All right, feel the way that stuff feels in your mouth. When you read a poem, you should feel where your tongue is in your mouth, and it should make repeating sounds that have a pattern. Stir cracks across. Root cellar. Nothing would sleep in that cellar, dank as a ditch. Bulbs broke out of boxes, hunting for clinks in the dark. Shoots and dangled and drooped and lolling obscenely from mildewed crates, hung down long and yellow evil necks like tropical snakes. What a congress of stinks, roots ripe as old bait, pulpy stems, rank silo rich, leaf molded, mature, manure lime piled against slippery planks. Nothing would give up life. Even the dirt kept breathing a small breath. Dank ditch, dark, dangled, droop, dirt, alliteration. Dank, broke, clinks, dark, neck, snakes, consonants. Ripe, solo, lime, piled, life, assonance. Fleet, solo, bulbs, dangled, lolling, obscenely meldewed, long, yellow, evil planks like piled tropical snakes. Root, ripe, rich, manure, slippery dirt, breathing breath. tropical ripe, pulpy, piled, slippery planks, mildewed stems, mold, manure, lime, small. Long L sounds, plus P's, plus B's and M's. They have a certain feel in the mouth. Long, tropical, loopy, sleepy, long, rolling, breathy, dank, moldy, and dark. The images also invoke certain feelings in your mouth. This is not something you can master in one day, class, but it's something you need to pay attention to. Language that sounds like what it means, evokes feeling synced with its meaning. You can feel it in your mouth. It feels slinky. It feels dark. It feels moldy. You hear the O sounds. You hear the ah sounds. Sounds that you make when you're surprised or grossed out. Those are the sounds of this poem. That's what you need to learn how to do. Any form of a sound pattern in poetry really is a form of rhythm, like when you dance. True or exact rhythm. The first emitted vowel and the final consonants in two words are exactly the same, and the final consonant, if there is one, differs. Cat, hat, beer, beer. Excuse me, I said true or exact rhythm, I meant rhyme. True rhyme. Cat, hat, ear, beer, hair, there. Slant or partial rhyme. The first consonant of any two words is the same, and the middle vowel is different, and the final consonant is the same. Hat, heat, ear, are, where, were. Assonance. Two or more of the words have the same vowel sounds. The pink breeze you need is free. Alliteration. Two or more of the same have the same initial consonant sound. Huge, hairy, hunk. Huge, hairy, hungry, hunk. Consonants. Two or more words have the same inconsonant sounds. Munch, the batch of crouched brayers. Alright? So notice alliteration is in the front. Assonance is anywhere, and consonance is in the back. And these are where you get your sound devices from. And finally, nothing could give up its life, even dirt kept breathing a small breath. Feel the click at the end of Rilke's poem? That's form. And a satisfying resolution or suspension of opposites, of tension. That's Swinburne. Okay, so what's free verse, as the term is generally understood if we covered all this in formal poetry? Is it poetry with no form? A poetry with no constraints or no prescriptions of any kind? Lines can be broken randomly with no patterns of sound or stress? No, not. Free verse, good ones, always have tons of rhythm and gorgeous sound patterns. They simply aren't prescribed in advance of the poem, but rather discovered in the writing of the poem. They are used more or less unconsciously or intuitively, and they will, of course, tend to be less regular than fixed form. T.S. Eliot said that good free verse always has the ghost of meter behind it. Free lines are typically broken according to the following principles. Free verse lines. Desire for a particular effect, ethos, or feeling. Smoothness and elegance, for example, with a spoken quality, whole sentences are complete phrases, and they're in stop. He was completely and outrageously without a stitch of clothing. It is almost like prose. Or maybe roughness, or a poem that fights against itself is broken, stuttery, broken against the syntax of the sentence and of the phrase. This is called enjambed. He was completely and outrageously without a stitch of clothing. Notice that how you break there actually changes the way you read the same sentence. He was completely and outrageously without a stitch of clothing. Notice that, again, a different rhythm comes with how you break the line. The sentence is the same. Rhetorical emphasis and desire to stress particular words are also used. He was completely and outrageously without a stitch of clothing. And sometimes it's breath units. He was completely and outrageously without a stitch of clothing. Note in this one, the line break is where you would naturally pause to take a breath. These are all options of how you break the line in free verse poetry. Now, we're not doing free verse this week. We're going to come back to that, but it's something that you need to know. And then visual emphasis. For great poets who really jams within jams a lot, see Robert Greeley. So, what determines stanza breaks in free verse? Each stanza is a verse paragraph focused on a single idea or topic. It has coherent unity, just like prose paragraphs do. Each stanza has an accompanying break of the unity of rhythm, or each stanza has a rhetorical gesture. We'll look at the The following is a free verse poem written as a prose paragraph with all of the poet's original line breaks removed. Read it in the side where you think the line breaks belong or would work best. On a piece of notebook paper, write it out as a long poem and with the line breaks reinserted. I'll show you the original poem in class so you can compare yours with the poet. Actually, I'm not going to do that. So here's the original poem.